sing a song so I can get through this 10 minutes. Yes, my name's Brenda Horgan and I'm one of the professional advisors at the Northern Ireland Social Care Council. And not long after I joined NISC, about, I think it's 3 or 4 years ago, they had been undertaking a review of the post-qualifying framework. And one of the kind of key pieces of work that was coming out of that was to try and develop tools or mechanisms or capacity to understand better the impact that learning and social work has in relation to candidate knowledge, service provision, service users and carers. And I was tasked with that piece of work, so I'll go into the detail now. This was a piece of work that I did. Can you hear me? The microphone seems. This is a piece of work that I did over a couple of years, and I'm kind of cutting it down into 10 minutes today. So I'm not going into a lot of details around the statistics. But if anyone has any burning questions about t-tests and p-values and the closer statistics of this, talk to me afterwards and I'll talk to you at a later date about that. But I won't be going into that today. So today I'm going to look at, I undertook a service evaluation and I'm going to go through the background of my service evaluation. Come on in. The aim of it, looking at the methodology, the analysis and the recommendations. In order to undertake this piece of work, I wanted to understand, first of all, you know, I promote the benefit and the value and the importance of post-qualifying education every day. That's part of my kind of main role. And want to promote the benefits of education for social workers and for managers and the wider organisation. So I had a look at the literature. It didn't undertake a systematic literature review, similar to what you heard about earlier, but tried to use as many as those kind of systematic approaches as possible. So it wasn't a systematic review, but I tried to do it in as systematic a way as possible. So it was clear from the evidence that I was looking at that overridingly the positive benefits for post-qualifying learning were around increased confidence for practitioners, increased confidence in relation to their engagement with other professionals, using social work skills such as direct work with service users, engaging in service users and change, increased confidence in terms of knowledge of policy and legislation. Other studies looked at the benefits of post-qualifying education as being around developing critically reflective practitioners through the increased use of evidence, research and theory to inform practice. The evidence, the research that the literature that I looked at also showed that post-qualifying education training can develop more rounded professionals so that they begin to understand the broader issues that affect social work generally and the wider health and social care system, and then develop a greater willingness to engage in developmental issues within their own practice. There were examples again from the literature, direct examples of the impact of social work education and practice, and that included an increased ability to prevent bad practice, better use of supervision and appreciation of the importance of supervision, and increased engagement with service users and carers. Also, the increased use of assessment skills, or more developed assessment skills, and improved recording and record writing. So the research that I was looking at was all primarily small scale, and when you talk about the kind of quality of the evidence, it was probably lacking robustness in a lot of cases, and I think that's the kind of the nature of a lot of research within social work at the minute. You're looking at smaller scale studies that, if you think of that hierarchy of strength of evidence, probably would have been at the lower end of the pyramid, but it's all I had to look at, so I had to try and kind of make the most of what I was dealing with. And to date, the evidence is quite clear that to date studies have failed to get as far when thinking about the impact of education, thinking about that impact for service users and carers. So the studies have not got as far as interviews with service users and carers, or used standardised and valid tools to measure change with service users and carers over time. So that's the level that I think we would all acknowledge is the most important level to get to, but it's the most difficult level to get to, and so far there are few studies that get to that depth of analysis. I was particularly interested in trying to think about, the impact of social work education. I had to narrow it down in terms of what kind of impact was I looking at, and coming out of the education, coming out of the literature, the key theme was around increased confidence in using knowledge and theory to inform practice. So I kind of honed that into an overarching concept of critical thinking, which is a concept that is well kind of known to social work. And the ability of social workers to use critical thinking skills is very recognised within social work and recognised as being an important skill. In fact, it's been described as a core competency in the development of professional judgment. Critical thinking is important to social work. It encourages social workers to apply theories to practice, to make informed decisions and explain their assessments and decision making. And it sits within the context of that evidence-informed or evidence-driven social worker. I would see critical thinking as being a fusion of knowledge and skills and attitudes, including the ability to understand your own value base as a social worker, including cultural biases of our own personal style of thinking. So it's really a very encompassing term that covers quite a lot. Within the literature, there are also a variety of ways of suggestions around teaching critical thinking. So within programmes, should it be infused within a programme? Should it be a separate component within an educational programme? There's a whole raft of literature around how critical thinking should be taught and indeed measured. So should a social worker, so should critical thinking be measured from a specific discipline, specific point of view, like social work critical thinking, or should it be measured from more a generic point of view? And again, there's a whole wealth of literature that could take me half of the day to get through. So there was lots of issues for me to consider in terms of developing my evaluation. A plug for the programme, and this is the name of the programme that it was when I was on it, but it was the Research Methods programme at the University of Ulster. I luckily or unluckily saw that this piece of work was up and coming, that I had to do it in terms of understand better the impact of social work education, and the closing date for the research programme, methods programme, was I think within a couple of weeks. So I applied to go onto the programme. So luckily or unluckily for me, luckily looking back, but unluckily at times during the process. But really, in undertaking this work through NISC, doing it through the research programme was really invaluable to me. So I would recommend it highly to people. Okay, so I've been probably talking a lot of the background and without getting to the crux of what I wanted to do. But I honed on in terms of the particular impact of social work education. I was interested in critical thinking. Did engagement on a social work post-qualifying programme increase someone's ability to use critical thinking skills? So the aim of my evaluation was to measure a social worker's critical thinking ability before they engaged on a programme and then after they engaged on the programme, and then to measure to see was there a difference pre and post, and was that difference kind of meaningful or significant. And I was looking at 2 of the programmes that we approved within our post-qualifying framework. I don't want to go into the details of the programmes in terms of say what the programmes were, because there were quite small numbers of people enrolled in the programmes, and for issues of confidentiality I've decided to kind of not include the names of the programmes within my evaluation or my write-up around it. Okay, so thinking about moving on to the methodology, I wanted to try and I was very cognizant, I suppose, of the studies that I was reading about, and that they were small scale nature, and looking at all the kind of deficits of those studies, and I wanted to try and up my game in terms of improve the method, have a methodology that I was quite confident about, but still understanding that it was a small scale piece of work that I was undertaking. So I identified a validated and standardised tool to measure someone's critical thinking ability, to measure their generic critical thinking ability, so it wasn't a social work specific kind of measurement of critical thinking. It was a standardised test taken over 45 minutes, and it had up to 34 questions. It looked at someone's overall critical thinking ability and then different sub-scales within that, so analysis, inference and evaluation. Halfway through, oh no. And that's 10 minutes. Right. God, I talk way more than I planned to. Sorry, I didn't realise. Do I just finish now? Yeah.
And in conclusion.
And the conclusion. Sorry, I planned that really badly. I found that there were statistically significant improvements in critical thinking ability. I also did effect size, and there was a strong effect size within my findings. So I was able to find statistical significance and practical significance, and very confidently able to say that those who were enrolled on the programmes, overall the critical thinking ability improved. But I'm really sorry I've talked way too much.
Thank you.
Now that we know that Karen is going to be so ruthless, this really will be a 10-minute whistle-stop tour of Community Connections. My name is Denise Galbraith and I'm the Community Connections Coordinator from Positive Futures. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of who we are and a brief overview of our project. So this is a little bit about us. This is our missions and our values. We're a charity organisation that provides support to people with a learning disability, people on the autistic spectrum disorder and people with an acquired brain injury. We're a person-centred organisation, and essentially what that means is we always put the person first. And we provide a range of services including a support living service, peripatetic housing support, respite services, shared lives care services. And then we also have a number of side projects as well. Can you tell I'm really nervous? I'm really on the spot here. And it's one of those special projects that I'm going to talk about today, and it's the Community Connections. And we receive funding for that as a result of the Social Work Innovation Fund. Why do we need to develop community connections? And I suppose this is just a bit about the rationale. So some of the findings from the Bamford Review reported that young people with a learning disability are characterised by isolation and a lack of social opportunities, which creates an over-reliance on their family to provide that support. So there's a need for services that support the inclusion of people with a learning disability in ordinary social activities, things that we tend to take for granted. Social care services are very good in terms of meeting basic needs, keeping people fed, clothed and keeping them safe. However, higher order domains such as social interaction and participation are often not met as well. Secondly, with the implementation of Transforming Your Care and its 12 key principles, this has brought with it the self-directed support agenda and personalisation. And that's about giving people the choice, control and flexibility in personalising the support that they need to meet the support that they want to personalise their needs. By 2018, it's estimated that approximately a third of all support packages will be delivered through self-directed support. So the importance of that is really, that's coming upon us. And most importantly, person-centred practice. Seeing the person that we support first and enabling them to realise their goals, dreams and aspirations. So in a separate project that we have run within Positive Futures, using the Adult Social Care Outcomes tool, which I'll refer to as ASCOT from now on, we had found that 27% of the people that we support said that their social needs were not being met. They wanted to be more developed or more connected, within their local communities, and they wanted opportunities to develop more meaningful friendships and relationships. And they wanted to increase their presence and contribution within their local community. And they wanted opportunities to develop more meaningful friendships outside of paid support. So basically what we're saying is that paid support should not be the primary means to helping individuals achieve their dreams and goals. So bridging the gap, research and practice. As a profession, social work doesn't stand still. We're constantly evolving, be that in line with policy or legislation, and also in developing alternative ways to work with our service users. We pilot new and innovative ways of working regularly, and we only have to look at some of the posters that have been on display over lunch to know that we're constantly piloting new and innovative ways. But perhaps we're not as good at talking about or sharing our experiences and our findings. So it is a benefit of the launch of the Social Work Strategy Research Scheme and events like this that we now have opportunities to evaluate, document and share this information with others. Research has told us that early preventative measures are more effective than implementing statutory protection. Within communities, building social capital and capacity and developing reciprocal relationships lead to stronger, more self-reliant communities. Communities are better able to organise themselves, and community members are more likely to enjoy a better quality of life. And they're also more able to recognise and attempt to reach out to isolated or less included individuals living within that community. The people that we supported said that they felt like tourists in their community. Essentially, they turned up for activities and they went home again. That was it. They didn't feel they knew anybody, they didn't feel connected with anybody there, and they didn't feel included. Therefore, using what we already know from the research, we're hoping to bridge this gap into practice. So this is our project aim: to develop relationships between individuals and their communities, as well as mentoring staff working in health and social care services to work in more creative and flexible ways when utilising community resources. And from that we had a number of expected outcomes. And that was essentially an increased focus on community development approaches, greater engagement between ourselves and local communities, and that the people we support have greater social participation and involvement within their local community. And then another element of that was developing a risk enablement policy and guidance which tackled positive risk-taking approaches. So the methodology. So as I said, this has been a three-tiered approach working with these three specific groups. Working directly with the people we support within one of our supported living services, we're looking at what is currently working well for the individual and what is not working so well, and how we can develop these areas, utilising community resources in order to achieve goals, dreams and aspirations. We're working with local communities and community groups to provide mentoring and guidance on how they can be more welcoming and accessible, and then identifying any relevant training that they feel they need. And then we've been providing mentoring and guidance for health and social care services to work in more creative and flexible ways when utilising community resources. So some of our results. So far we've worked with six of the 13 people that we support within our supported living services, and we've begun identifying potential community connections, and we're making small steps towards achieving these. We move at a pace set by the individual, moving from being present to actively contributing in the community. For an example, Anna wanted to get a pet. However, because of the health issues of her co-tenant, that's not currently possible. So we have looked at exploring volunteering at an animal shelter. That is, working with the animals, helping to walk and feed them, and refresh their bedding. In return for doing this work, Anna will learn the vital skills needed to care for an animal and to build relationships with other people at this animal shelter for when she does get her own pet. And this is about, again, building reciprocal relationships and establishing a role for Anna within the community and the animal shelter. And again, using the ASCOT tool, we'll be evaluating this towards the end. Some of the challenges of this has perhaps been that because we're moving at a pace that is dictated by the person we support, it maybe doesn't move as fast as we would like. Or perhaps this looks like a very sort of step-by-step process, but it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes we're being present and we're all there and we're ready to go and we're ready to make the next step, but then something sets us back. So it's a bit of a back and forward process, but again, it's all about taking it at the speed of the person that we support. In terms of public and personal involvement, the person that we support is always at the centre of everything we do. So they very much lead and dictate what is happening and the support that's being provided for them. Working with local communities and community groups. So this is really about identifying resources and groups available within the local communities and how we can meet the needs of the people we support. And then in return, we can provide them with any training they needs they have, and gathering information on how we can make communities more inclusive and what is currently going on in community groups to make them more inclusive. So training they have identified is guidance in meeting the emotional needs of the individuals who attend their group, guidance on positive risk-taking approaches, and guidance on cultural changes. That is keeping up to date with changes in how social care is being delivered. However, some of the challenges of that were we'd envisaged that happening at a group level. However, this hasn't always been possible, and it hasn't been possible to get everyone together at the same time. So we've had to do that on a very much one-to-one basis. And also another challenge was some of the systems with the community groups, social workers and the people we support are not all linked. So some community groups have limited awareness of self-directed support and personalisation. And this makes it difficult for them to communicate the needs of for personalised support versus the more traditional daycare model of support. So for the staff who work in health and social professions, we've facilitated 2 developing community connections workshops where we've provided mentoring and guidance to those who work in health and social care services and working in a more person-centred way, person-centred, creative and flexible approach to developing community connections. And that is about recognising that paid support does not have to be the primary means of providing support to individuals. This has been received very positively. Staff are motivated to think more creatively about engaging with the people they support. They want to ask more creative questions, and they want to take time to find out what the person really wants. And the workshop have helped develop the link between self-directed support and community connections. There's also been ongoing mentoring work with support staff as well in developing confidence in how they can develop community connections. However, some of the challenges of this were that frontline staff. Oh, can I give you just a quick? So, yeah, she really is. Gosh, ruthless. So essentially what we're saying is we have had great feedback on all of the work that we've been doing so far, both with the health and social care staff, with the support staff, with the community groups and with the people we support. However, we need to build connections between the personal level as the people we support, the community groups, and then the structural or organisational level in terms of the health and social care frontline staff. And without connections between these groups, essentially you're paying lip service to personalisation, you're paying lip service to, or you're undermining everything that self-directed support is hoping to achieve, and most importantly you're not listening to the person who is being supported and you're not hearing what it is they want to say. So again, if there's any questions, feel free to ask afterwards. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the chance to present to you today. I think what we're about to talk will really build on the 2 previous speakers, on the whole notion of critical thinking and on the notion of personalisation. My name is Fergal O'Brien. I manage a group of health promotion community development workers in the Newry and Mourne area, Lucifer Trust, and I've about 25 years of working using community development approaches both as a practitioner, as a manager and as an educator. Maureen, do you want to introduce yourself? You can do that, okay. And basically, what I was conscious of that we wanted to look at a piece of research here to establish the demand for PIP accredited CD programme for social work. So we're conscious like that would feed all the things that you guys have already been mentioning. You know, the policy context for community development is the social work strategy, transforming your care, PPI, the statutory duty to consult, the research and continuous improvement strategy, especially going to action research, the regional community development strategy, making life better, which is the major public health strategy. And really the rationale for this was the framework specification for all social work students identifies CD as an essential component in an undergraduate social work programme, and then the gap exists for the rest of your professional life. So that's the context. Our methodology, we got representatives together from the trusts, from NISC, from the board, voluntary sector and academic institutions. I was released for a day a week to go at this. We developed a questionnaire with a steering group via a SurveyMonkey. and NISC very kindly helped to actually distribute this. The survey was targeted social work heads of services, first line managers, senior managers, practitioners and trainers, both in the voluntary and statutory sector. The respondents, we had 96 from the statutory, 96 managers from the statutory, 8 from the voluntary, so that's 104 people came behind us regionally. Some of the key findings. The big question was, would community development approaches help you deliver in some of the major strategies? You know, is there a need for training on it? And the managers came back and said 72% wanted it for themselves. That's 75 people. And for social work staff in the organisation, 92%, that was 96 people, wanted it for social workers in their organisation. I'd have to say, by the way, that this starting with social work, this could go way, because community development is not the prerogative of just social work. It could go right beyond that, like the Making Life Better strategy, multidisciplinary. So this is the starting point. There's a professional gap here, but this could go much wider. So basically, we started then asking the question, would community development approaches help you with the following strategies? And our previous speaker was talking about personalisation, and 62% of managers says, yeah, that will help me. And 76% said that would help our social workers. And the partnership arrangements with service users, communities and other disciplines, agencies and sectors. Big one. The partnership thing in community development. And that theme again has gone through this conference from beginning to end. 88%, 92% for themselves as managers and 85% for the social workers. The regional community development strategy, you'll notice that a recurrent theme through a lot of these strategies is that sometimes when we asked people about the strategies themselves, would this help you, deliver on this strategy? A lot of people didn't know what the strategy is, or there was a poor response. But you get into components or elements of the strategy, it was different. And one of the big ones, partnership again, improving outcomes for service users and carers through contracts with the voluntary sector. That was an interesting one. In terms of managers, 70%. And then the sustainability, community skills, knowledge, funding, community infrastructure. And PPI is a theme right across every strategy, so we could have gone on to that one. Today's conference, the social work research and continuous improvement strategy, the knowledge of frontline staff, service users and carers to inform commissioning, 64%, and for themselves felt CD would help them, and 60% for the social workers. Audit activity, promoting the principles of PPI and equality and human rights. There's one for your wee bingo. A critical thinking on community development approaches, and that was very interestingly put together there by Brenda. The Making Life Better strategy, which is the public health one. Big social model of health was the big thing in that. And that's language that actually goes across all disciplines, goes across social workers and health visitors, right across. And translating CD policies, theories and models into practice to improve health and wellbeing. Okay, seen that? Qualitative complementary strategies. Just a couple of highlighted points: promotion, enablement, self-directed support, the Bamford objectives, which have already been referred to in a previous speaker. This is over to my colleague.
I'm highly impressed, because I had Fergal well warned 5 minutes and then I'm coming up. I suppose, as well as the questions that Fergal has outlined, the next question we wanted to ask people was, well, what sort of type of programme? Because they'd identified, yes, this was going to be useful on a number of different levels. And I'm assuming that everybody's acquainted with the PIP framework, so I'm not going to... I'm just going to say that we asked them, did you want a PIP accredited module? Did you want a regional programme where people would go on and then they would actually put some submission together, either with the individual assessment route or the new credit accumulation route? Or did you want the 3-year programme? As you can see, the 3-year master's programme, there was very much a very clear, no, we don't want that. But people did want a combination of short course, modular, what we kept getting, and you'll see the theme is coming out. Yes, we wanted modules, bite-sized pieces, people could actually go and work on. And there we go, 85% said yes, 2 to 4 day modules, longer period. Really, we got a very clear message that that's not where we were going. Some of the qualitative comments just about the course design, again, the same theme is coming through. 1 to 2 days a month, like we already have with a lot of our PQ or our PIP programmes. No lengthy programmes, but interestingly they were saying, and I think it's fair enough, we need to be flexible in this, and that we need to have a modular approach, but let's do it in such a way that if anybody did want to get a master's and go to the end, that they would be able to do that. some overall comments. I'll let you have a read at them, but basically, I mean, again, there were things coming through that were generally very positive. But there were some sort of caveats there about there was concern about in the statutory sector, would people have the time to do, it's hard enough trying to do what they're doing already, will they be able to, because this means you front load, you do a lot at the beginning and the preventative end, and that's always quite difficult, I think, number one, to quantify, and number two, to get people to see the benefits of. One of the things that we hadn't really given consideration, but it has come through with several people, was this is actually highly relevant to social care staff as well as social work staff. And I mean, in particular, we have the example there of the daycare provision, and again that ties in very clearly with transforming your care back out into the community, all of that. And our regulator was saying very clearly that they would want to see this within the PIP framework. So some of the issues then, maybe just for discussion, was Fergal's already discussed the first one, which was when you ask people about the strategies, there was a low response rate, but when you actually went into the components, it seemed to come together for them. Our low response from the voluntary sector, we're not really sure why, because, and I know many of you know Fergal, and if you do know Fergal, you know that he went to great lengths to ensure that everybody knew about this, but we didn't get the responses back. Maybe they felt they're further down the line than we were in the statutory sector, we're not really sure. The key themes that have come forward are partnership, improved outcomes for service users, person-centred approaches, evidence-based practice, and I think that's all good stuff that we wanted to hear. It is also relevant outside of health and social care, and I suppose we did feel it with hindsight, looking back ourselves, maybe justice and education weren't actually included in the cohort that we actually spoke to, you know. And some of the, so 55% overall we had support for an accredited module or short course provision. I've said the sample, there were limitations to the survey, the time frame was quite tight. The Survey Monkey itself did throw up some limitations in terms of we wanted people to prioritise 1, 2, 3, and I think that wasn't possible. So there were, and we accepted the strategies that we actually asked about. There, I mean, it was a limited range, that there are others out there, but we felt we had to start somewhere. So our conclusions basically that we took from that was there is support out there, and this is only step one, if you like, of a 3-step process, which I'll end with, which is the way forward. But we got clear evidence to support, yes, we do want community development modules within PIP, that it will deliver on the strategies that we've talked about, and the clear themes that are coming through are, as we've said, the partnership, personalisation agenda, etc. And that this should be something that will bridge a gap between research and practice. So our way forward is, as I say, that was step one. We now need to go and do a piece of work in terms of looking further into what is the content, and we hope to do that via focus groups. And then we need to look at what modules are we talking about. Are we talking about something in consolidation, something in specialist, and something in leadership and strategic? Because managers, we only surveyed managers because we thought they're the people who are going to release, they're the people who are going to be, at the end of the day, either make this or break this. We have it in internal discussion. We've had discussions with the University of Ulster, who have a community development department, and the community development department and the social work departments are working together to see whether or not the PIP framework and their CPPD, which continuing professional and personal development, will work. And I see the red card. I've only 2 seconds. So we will have the focus groups. We're putting in a statement of intent for March, and we're hoping to do a lot of work. The only final thing I want to say is we're hoping that by 2017 we will have a final programme. With regard to the focus groups, Fergal has a page. We had a page. So if anyone's interested in being involved in the focus groups, that you could put your name down, and that we will make contact. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both. Next up we have Dr. Lynn McCare from Queen's University in Belfast. Yes, Lynn. Thank you. How do I get rid of this? Just click. Oh, sorry Denise, I've just clicked on yours by mistake and it won't go away.
How did they get rid of this? Does anybody know? Come on now. Hi, I'm Lynn McCare. On behalf of Carola Dullenberger and my colleague Julianne Jordan, we're kind of a bit of outsiders here talking to social workers, and I hope what we are saying will touch on the issues of inclusivity and education that the other speakers have already brought up. I just want to sort of give a snapshot of some recent research we have done on autism awareness. Now, as you may know, an increasing number of children and young people are being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which is a developmental condition which characteristically will include delays or difficulties with communication and social skills. And in many instances, this co-occurs with learning disabilities. In Northern Ireland school children, the prevalence is currently estimated to be 2.2%, which is about 1 in 45. But in fact, this figure might well be an underrepresentation because the UK Millennium Cohort Study, which includes data from Northern Ireland, indicates parents reported rates of 3.5% prevalence when their children were 11 years old. Prevalence figures for adults in Northern Ireland are not available, unfortunately. So in light of this increasing prevalence, we wanted to identify general levels of autism awareness among the public and professionals, and to investigate how best resources could be directed for any awareness campaigns which are actually mandated by the Autism Act. And this presentation will just be a snapshot really of our findings, and it will focus on the awareness of children and young people against the background of general awareness among adult members of the general public and health and social care professionals. Now, we designed 3 modules for ARC, Access Research Knowledge surveys: the Northern Ireland Life and Times survey in 2012, the Kids Life and Times of 2014, and Young Life and Times of 2014. We also designed tailored autism training and awareness surveys for statutory and private sector professionals. In terms of PPI, we had a steering group which consulted on our wider research, and that was made up of service users and a voluntary sector representative. And our survey questions on training were reviewed and informed by autism professionals. And now, just briefly, the responses. From the Northern Ireland Life and Times, there were 1,204 adults responded. From Kids Life and Times, there were 2,319 children in Year 7, and that's mostly 10 and 11-year-olds. And Young Life and Times, there were 1,034 16-year-olds responded. And when we asked the professionals, their survey came back, we had 798 responses, of which overwhelmingly the vast majority were health and social care professionals. Approximately 10% of them were employed in broad-based category of welfare, which includes social work. So one of the first questions we asked the young children and young people was what autism is. And we also asked the same question for adults. And you can see that Year 7 children, that's the 10 and 11-year-olds, have a much lower awareness of what autism is than either young people of 16 or adults in the general public. Now, an interesting thing that came up for us was that in those surveys, 2.7% of the Kids Life and Times respondents and 3.1% of the Young Life and Times respondents told us they themselves had autism, and these figures are higher than the sort of current rate of prevalence in Northern Ireland. General awareness for adults and young people is very good, as you can see, around the 80-82%. And it's probably due at least in part to campaigns by national and international voluntary groups, such as the one coming up shortly, the Light It Up Blue campaign by Autism Speaks. Now, we actually asked professionals a more focused question on training, as given the increasing prevalence of autism, this could have a direct impact on their practice. And overall, this snapshot shows how health and social care professionals told us they had taken up autism training offered by their employers. Level or Tier 1 is basic awareness, level Tier 2 is more practice specific, and level or Tier 3 is designed for those taking a lead in autism provision or diagnostics. Now, some 73% of the health and social care trust staff who responded told us that they had contact with people with autism, varying from about 16% who saw people with autism on an almost daily basis to 39% who saw people infrequently. But so there's a kind of a gap there with people who are taking up training and people who are actually involved with people with autism. Now, one of the interesting things that they told us was an open question on improvement, and a number of professionals told us they would like to see mandatory initial training in autism, easier access to training such as online training, which is now I think available through the Northern Health and Social Care Trust, and training which is more tailored to their individual roles. But of course training is not the only way to improve your awareness of autism, and we looked at how many people said they knew someone with autism personally, and the figures show that young people or children at school know considerably fewer people with autism than the other groups. The most aware group of people with autism are the 16-year-olds. And you can see that the general public and health and social care professionals, their personal knowledge of someone with autism is roughly about the same. So when we asked children how they could describe autism, how they understood it, we put together word clouds which use the depths of colour and respective size of words to indicate frequency of terms. And these indicates that the 16-year-olds, the young life and times, have a much more sophisticated understanding, which you might really expect from 16-year-olds. But the 10 and 11-year-olds stress disability and difference an awful lot more, and actually use the word disease when they're talking about autism. Autism is not a disease. So we asked participants if they would feel comfortable if a peer with autism was living next door to them, was in their class, or getting extra help in class. Now, in general, Year 7 pupils, that's the 10 and 11-year-olds, were much less comfortable with this than the 16-year-olds, although the great majority from both groups were very supportive of children with autism, or young people with autism, getting more support in class. Now, overall misconceptions or negativity or lack of understanding from peers can have serious implications for inclusion in the classroom, and indeed, as you heard from the other speakers, from outside it all starts very early on. If you're not included at the start, it's increasingly difficult to get included later on in life. Some 20% of children with ASD are bullied in school, which is approximately 3 times more than other children, and overall children with ASD miss school somewhere between 8 and 13 days per school year more than other children who don't have ASD. Some 20% are excluded from school compared to 1.5% of other children. And most children with ASD have fewer friends than those who do not have ASD. So there is a big gap here. So where do we go? Clearly there's a need for carefully targeted awareness training, including better access to tailored training for professionals, that is, increasing emphasis on skills rather than just a sort of autism awareness. For children and young people, there needs to be a consistent approach to training for peers, especially in primary school, with more focus on positives and inclusion. Continued national and international campaigns are very welcome, and while public awareness is very good, it should be monitored. For example, it would be probably advisable to repeat the modules just to see that that level of 82% is still being kept up. Now, our own research from other areas, indicates that inclusion and understanding is better promoted by actively engaging the peers, this peer-mediated intervention, rather than just by providing information. So programs that involve classmates in improving social skills not only benefit the child or young person with autism, they also benefit the peers who gain more self-confidence and more knowledge. Now, our own research indicates that school students with ASD would welcome more input into peer education, and that teachers and indeed some parents with autism themselves think that buddy schemes would be beneficial. But of course this needs to be sort of balanced by the fact that not every child, not every parent or carer wants that level of disclosure, so it has to be a kind of a sensitive process and based from school to school or from college to college. So overall, general public awareness of autism is good, but maybe there should be now more focus on information about autism and the sort of support mechanisms that can be used to improve life, evidence-based practice, and how these can help. Sort of how can we get it into practice that young people with ASD, parents and carers, and a range of informed and experienced professionals and voluntary groups can work together to produce a sort of balanced approach to improving autism awareness in schools and colleges, and based on sound research knowledge, and to implement evidence-based interventions to improve inclusion. And I just want to acknowledge, thank you, all the people who gave their time to take part in the surveys, and some of it was funded in part by OFM DFM, and if anybody wants any more information on where this sort of information in research was drawn from, that's it there. Did I get it under the 10 minutes?
Absolutely. reasons that could have explained those differences, like, you know, kind of lack of empathy, being more congruent with the different stages of development, or was there?
It probably is developmental. You know yourself what teenagers are like. They're much more likely to discuss emotions and discuss their classmates. Children in primary school may not get that opportunity. And
Or it might even be development. I was just thinking some of the kind of areas, but it might have been developmentally kind of, they weren't ready at that stage to have that level.
well, they're maybe not ready to have a sophisticated understanding, but I think what would concern me personally is that it's a lack of understanding and perhaps the separation of children with autism not being included in things. I mean, 1 in 45 means that most primary schools will have 3, 4, 5 kids with autism, and yet half the kids who responded to the survey weren't aware of that. Now, maybe the kids in their school are fine and are having no problems, but I'm the parent of a son with autism, and you know, there were very few school days where there wasn't something. You know, even for whatever reason they knew he had autism, and you know that was. It's unlikely that most kids are sailing through without some incident, and perhaps that can be frightening for kids too. So you want to emphasise the positives rather than perhaps the negatives.
Maybe I should say something.
Sure.
Just to thank everybody. It's very heartening to hear of so much research that's trying to improve services, and I think you're right in saying that there was a sort of community development concept overarching them all. And one of the things I'm struggling with is the definition of community development. But anyway, that's another matter. I know that I'm expected to say something about PPI, so better. Right, so what I think I sort of maybe felt missing was the idea that there was involvement of service users and carers at the very initial level of planning. Because, for example, if you're really interesting project, I'm looking down that gentleman who did it from Southeastern, was it? Southern Trust. Maybe had there been that involvement at the very initial stages, then you may not have hit the voluntary sector low-level response.
We did actually just involve a number of representatives from umbrella organisations, and also as a service user lead within the Health and Social Care Board.
Yeah.
And just under the steering group, I hadn't really time to kind of get into that. But I do take your point.
Yeah, you see,
I do take your point that it's all about ownership.
Because there's the question
yeah,
that the lady talking about from Positive Futures, there's the presence, and then there's the effect.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? You can be present and you can say that, or not have the impact, you know. Because maybe, to me, coming out of a voluntary sector background, I would be thinking, well, maybe I know more about community development, why do I want to be doing this? Do you know what I mean? But equally, you might want to tease that out and find out, well, what is it that they would want to do, and that would fit in the general ethos of this project, you know. So that's just the point I'm making about really across the board. And sometimes it's easier than others to think about it. Like I was struggling with some of the ones that were very specific to training within the academia. Where are you going to put the service user and carer in that one? Because it's not okay, as one of the presentations this morning was said, is they're not there as participants. They're there as involved as some sort of outside the project level, not subjects of it, but contributors to development of it, and comment. Sorry,
The way I totally agree, because one of the things I meant to say, and I've really taken from today, was we're talking about our next step being focus groups to look at the content.
Yes.
And I think we haven't done it up to now in that meaningful way, but I think that's where we can more meaningfully get the voice of the service user or the carer to say, you know, these are the things you should be thinking about in terms of content.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that will be something that we can actually do.
Yes.
And it's also, you know, some people were talking about the power there of peer searchers. Well, that's absolutely in the community development kind of ethos of peer group coming in. And we have loads of examples. It's way outside the time that we have today of actually really good kind of initiatives and things that are going. And you know, and we would hope that this framework would really encourage people from the very start, the very onset, just as you're saying, to actually engage if it's the positive future idea or the autism idea or wherever you're doing it, you know, that's a key principle of it. So do take your point.
Could I ask Brenda a question? Brenda, with your sample, it was with people who were already engaged in a program, and is there any sense of those people may already be critical thinkers and who will naturally engage perhaps on a program? How do we engage people who don't engage with a program? How do we enhance their critical thinking skills if they don't want to go onto a program? From a workforce point of view, we can't put everybody on a program, but how would we increase everybody's critical thinking without necessarily having to work course?
No, I think that's a really important point, and you know, we know through research again that people who engage within post-qualifying education are often more motivated and self-directed learners, and maybe you can make an assumption that they may be more inclined to use developed or critical thinking skills. I suppose what I didn't get to any of that was the type of measurement that I used, and it was standardised and validated, so I was very interested in using that. But if I was doing it again, I'd like to have a tool that was more standardised and valid, but within a social work context, because the test that I administered, it was excruciating to administer. It was like giving someone the 11 plus and saying you've got 45 minutes to complete it, and then giving them their responses afterwards, and if they fell in a category that wasn't a category they wanted to be in, how did that feel for their self-esteem undertaking a course, and those are issues that I hadn't considered. So I think, Paul, it would be more around having a social work specific way to measure critical thinking ability in a standardised way, and then you'd have to find ways to use that against across a wider population of social workers, and not just those that have kind of self-selected onto courses. So that's a whole PhD in itself, I think, or a couple of PhDs. So I haven't really answered you, sorry.
No, but it's something that I think we have to think about, because with financial restrictions we might not even be able to put everybody on a course, but we still need people to be critical thinkers, and how we do that as an organisation is interesting.
Just on PPI, if anybody wants to sign up for a focus group, give me your details. That's the next stage.
So is that just in the Southern Transport?
It's regional, and
regional?
we're going to be meeting with Ulster University to put in expression of interest in the 3rd of March, and then the idea of a focus group has been talked about, and that would be good from a service user perspective, also from a staff perspective, just to get people what's the relevance in community development to your mental health, or your disability, or your childcare, whatever you need. So,
I think that programme, those modules or whatever you develop, could be applicable to people that use service users and carers, as well as social care staff and social workers. And I suppose it'll be trying to find, provision that can kind of cover all those groups, and then if it's going to be accredited through NISC or whoever else, how you'll manage that challenge,
I think there's lots of challenges ahead. I mean, not least social work seeing it as relevant, even though I know we're talking today and we can link it into all the strategies, but when you're out there and you have a choice of going on a practice teaching programme, safeguarding programme, or a community development programme, managers have difficult decisions to make. But I suppose the benefit will be of linking up with the University of Ulster. You already have a framework that there will be people outside of social work who can link into it, and social workers and social care might be able to link into it. I mean, these are all things we need to think about, which is why we do need a broader perspective. And make it manageable for the University of Ulster so that it's feasible.
You see, it's a really old concept. I mean, it's coming out of the 60s and earlier. Do you know what I mean? And maybe it needs, and I'm not one for this, I mean, I loved it, you know what I mean? But maybe it needs being made more meaningful, even in the words that are used to describe it. Do you know what I mean? Without tying it too much still in the policies that it's supposed to be meeting, just giving it its own validity and, and antidepressant practice, that whole area.
Tomorrow, Ulster University is coming down to talk to community volunteers about doing a level 3, level 4 community development course. We've set that up to take your point, because this, at all levels, you see people using this at different levels, and they've just done like a training by the Community Development Health Network and the Social Model Health, and this kind of community development will be the next step up. And that's everything from teen mums, ex-prisoners, people working with older people. There's a whole range of kind of groups that have actually got involved in that volunteering.
I would love to see it happening, because my fear is that concepts like care in the community just get used and abused, and there's no meaning whatsoever attached to them except dump. I know the Community Development Health Network are doing a very good job, but we had, I was in the Balfour Monitoring Group still am. We did a big conference, and we had representatives from, it was sort of triangular conference, services, carers, professionals, no hats, just everybody talking as straight as you could put it straight. What about crisis response? And I mean, that's really what came out. The professionals cannot respond to the crisis because they don't hear about it quickly enough and they can't get the response in. So it was the need for community level infrastructure there that can handle a mental health crisis, do you know what I mean? So it's really important, because I just think homes the hub and all this jargon nonsense, are just so much that. There's been no care and thought put into what the meaning of all that is, and how do we really make it work.
I think, after listening to everyone today, I think it's very much go back to what we all train to do, and that is put the person at the centre of the decisions that we make. And I think listening to Positive Futures, as we go forward and we use the word self-directed support, we've got to look at what does that actually really mean. And it really means if we were working in a person-centred way, we would allow people the choice to decide what they want their care to look like, what they want their community services to look like, and what is going to meet their needs, as opposed to what we think will meet their needs. And it's moving away from that expert position and feeling that we know best, to recognising that the strengths and the expertise lie within the families and the service users that we work with. So when we bring the focus back to what it is we need to do and what outcome we want to achieve, the answer lies with the service users that we work with. It doesn't lie with us. And every part of the system connects to the other part of the system, whether it's education for those professionals who need to understand how the systems work and how people work, right through to the services that deliver the services to our service users. So it is together working in partnership to put the person at the centre of the decision making and meet their needs through developing services as they need them rather than what we think they need. So I think it's 20:15, 20 minutes discussion, tea break now. So thank you all very much, and thanks to all the speakers.